Late one autumn night, Sarah and her younger brother Ben were staying at their grandmother's old house in the woods. The house had always felt a little strange to Sarah, but tonight it felt downright eerie. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the trees creaked like they were whispering secrets. It was the kind of night that made you want to stay under the covers, but Sarah couldn't sleep. Neither could Ben. They were in the guest room, the one with the old-fashioned bed and faded wallpaper. The house creaked and groaned, as if it were alive. Sarah stared out the window, watching the moonlight filter through the swaying branches of the trees. That's when she saw it, a figure in the window of the house across the yard. At first, she thought it was her grandmother, standing perfectly still, gazing out into the night. But something about it felt off. The figure was too rigid, too unmoving. Sarah squinted, trying to make sense of it. It was a shadow, tall and thin, almost too tall for a human. The longer she looked, the more unsettling it became. The figure didn't even seem to blink, and its eyes, if you could call them eyes, looked hollow, like dark pits in the moonlight. "Ben," Sarah whispered, shaking her brother awake. "Ben, wake up." Ben groggily turned to her, his face half lit by the dim light of the room. "What's wrong?" "There's someone in the window across the yard," Sarah said, her voice trembling. Ben blinked, still half asleep. "It's probably Grandma. She probably got up to get a glass of water or something." Sarah shook her head. "No, it's not Grandma. Something's wrong." She stared at the figure again. The more she watched, the more the feeling of dread grew, like the shadow was aware of her, watching her right back. And then it moved. Slowly, deliberately, it raised a hand and pressed it against the glass. The glass wasn't clear, it was fogged up, but the hand left a dark imprint as it slid down the pane. Sarah gasped, and Ben finally looked toward the window. But when they both looked back, the figure was gone. Just the moonlight and the trees remained, casting long shadows over the yard. Ben let out a nervous laugh. "It's just your imagination, Sarah. Go back to sleep." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The room felt colder, and the air was thick with unease. She stared at the window, her mind racing. Maybe it was a trick of the light, or maybe it was something worse. But before she could convince herself it was nothing, there came a soft, scraping sound. It was coming from the window. Ben sat up, now fully awake, his eyes wide. "What was that?" "Shh," Sarah whispered. "Listen." The scraping sound continued, like something, or someone, was dragging something heavy across the glass. Then, just as Sarah was about to pull the curtain back to look, the door creaked open behind them. They both turned in horror to see a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. Grandma. Or at least, that's what Sarah thought at first. But when the figure stepped into the room, she saw that it wasn't Grandma at all. It was the same tall, thin figure from the window, now standing in the doorway with its hollow eyes fixed on them. Sarah opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The figure raised its hand, and Sarah felt the coldness in the room intensify. It reached out toward them, its fingers twitching like it was trying to grab hold of something, or someone. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the figure vanished. The door slammed shut with a deafening bang. For a moment, Sarah and Ben sat frozen in silence, staring at the door. And then, in the dead silence of the house, they heard the faintest whisper, a voice so soft it seemed to come from the very walls. "I'm always watching." The air grew still, and in the dark, the sound of scratching against the window began once more.